and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I reached out to Sven, and I said, you know, I'm really touched by your book, and I'd really like to have you come and maybe share a little bit about your story here with some of the Armenians here in Texas. So in any case, let me just start admitting some of these people that are coming into the waiting room here. So I think what we had discussed the other day is that, you know, you take sort of, you know, 20 minutes or so and talk a little bit about your book. I have a few questions that I haven't had a chance to ask you. He's got some really interesting stories in here, and he'll expand upon them, I'm sure.
Yeah,
and then open up the floor for some, you know, Q&A.
Yeah, very good. Right, I don't know where to start. The thing is that I actually got involved in Armenia when I was only like 15 or 16 years old, when my dad gave me the 40 Days of Musadag, the book that probably all of you know. And I read that because that was exactly the time when Turkey invaded Cyprus and occupied 40% of northern Cyprus. And I said to my dad, how can they do that? And he said, well, that's nothing compared to what they did to the Armenians. And he gave me the book. And we also had an Armenian friend and artist in Oslo called Eric Papazian. He came to visit our house a lot, and he didn't talk very much about Armenia, but I just noticed that he had a strange name, and I asked him, where does that name come from? Well, I'm Armenian. And that was it. And that kind of triggered that I started reading about it a little bit. But actually the 40 Days of Musadag was what triggered me already then in the young years. And I started reading more books about the genocide, checking all kinds of, at the time, encyclopedias, because you couldn't check very much on Google, obviously. And then as I started studying, I traveled around the world to go to Armenian genocide lectures. I did not enroll in any programs or anything, but I checked out when do they have Armenian lecture time in Amsterdam, in Paris, in Berlin, even New York. And I went and tried to learn as much as possible and got to know a lot of very good lecturers. Now, in my later life, like from the 2010, I had heard a lot of lectures by Taner Akçam that you probably know of, the Turkish genocide scholar who lives in the United States, and also another Turk in Amsterdam, Ümit Ümgür, who's a fine scholar. And of course, these guys, like Ümit, has been to the archives in Istanbul and had free access because it was a Turk, and the Turks thought that he was actually making their case, but he wasn't, because he was really eager to find out the truth about the genocide. And he has a lot of students working very hard to teach them about the genocide, and especially the denial of the genocide. Anyway, I got very eager. I have Turkish friends in Norway. Well, I had Turkish friends in Norway. Now I only have a couple of them left because they all get really mad at me because of this. But some of them remain, and those who remain, they actually change their mind a lot. So that's an interesting thing when they start reading. And in the book, I talk about my very best friend from early years, from when I was 7, living in Moss in southern Norway. I had this friend Ergin from Istanbul and his family, and I went a lot there to have dinner. He was in my class in primary school. And we had so much fun together that, you know, and we made up this funny language, was half Turkish, half Norwegian. So nobody could understand what we were talking about. And so he was really a very, very good friend. We even exchanged blood at the time to say that we were blood brothers. Now, when I went back to Istanbul, like must have been 15 years ago, no, 10 years ago, they had moved back, his family, so I had not had contact with him for the last like 20 years, 25 years. I met him, and that was really, really interesting. I was there just with the school, with the teachers for kind of a team building course, seeing Istanbul, and then having some again, and we had so much fun until he took me to Istanbul, the Peace Park, the Liberty Park, where this statue or this mausoleum of Talat Pasha is erected. And then I kind of remembered everything that I'd learned during the past years, and it really gave me the shivers. And he asked me, "What's wrong with you?" And then, you know, the whole thing came out. I said that, okay, I'm really interested in finding out more about the Armenian genocide. I read all the books, and you guys are denying it. What do you think, Aygin? And then he had not heard about it because he'd gone to international schools and he had no idea. And he said, "Well, we couldn't have done something like that. You know, like every Turk says, this is too serious. This is really bad. Turks don't do that kind of stuff." Then we went to the museum, the military museum, and we saw exactly the opposite. You know how it looks like. They say that Armenians killed all the Turks and they had to get rid of the Armenians. And there were photos of actually Armenians being killed, and they turned it around. So I explained to her again, you know, where I stood and everything, and left Istanbul. And then I again actually went to different universities to find out more about this. And of course, doing it in Turkey, came to the conclusion that there was no genocide and that I had been double-crossed by somebody and that Armenians had done this to me and he had to save me from this. This is really a sick story. And then I describe in the book actually how we met in Yerevan on the 23rd of April in 2015, where actually we had a lot of phone conversations, and he tried to convince me that there had been no genocide. And I said, I can't talk to you about this because now I am in Armenia. He called me while I was there. And so I just hung up and said, I can't talk to you. Now I'm having the time of my life with Armenians here. And Armenians from Australia, from America, from Germany, I don't know, they were from everywhere. And I had so much contact with everybody. So I thought, I'm not going to discuss this with a Turk right now. And then he showed up in Armenia on the 23rd, on Tsisker Nakabert. There was my friend Aygin. And he said, we have to figure this out. And of course, we spent weeks and weeks in Armenia. We went to Artsakh. And of course, the guy turned totally around. I mean, he's now fighting for recognition of the genocide in Turkey. You know, the way that he can do it, it's really difficult. I've had people calling me from Turkey and especially from Azerbaijan, asking me for Aygin's address. They would like to talk to him. Of course, they don't get the address, and Aygin is not his real name either, because I know that, I mean, he'll be harassed and things can happen to him. So that's actually, the book is kind of written around the fact, we as friends, how it turns, how we figure out that actually there was a genocide, how he's convinced that there was one. And then I add a lot of funny things that we do in Armenia together. We go to the Alphabet Park in Boyakan. We meet a lot of Armenians. We go home to my chauffeur, who's called Tigran, and everybody calls me Tigran in Armenia. So I actually took that name every time I'm there. They just call me Tigran. And they said, can you pick a second name? And I said, okay, if I'm Armenian, I would have liked to come from Van Alich. And I said, okay, so my name would be Tigran Van. Is that okay? Does it have to end with Yan? No, other people are called Ararat and some people are called Sevan, so your name could be Van. So that's what they call me. Anyway, we had really the time of our lives. And, you know, Aygin was one thing, but being alone in Armenia, because that's what I thought. I had to do this. I have to do this on my own. I have to go to Armenia now. I've read everything about the genocide, everything about the denial of the genocide. I don't know anything about the language, the culture, the food. I don't know anything about Armenia, but this is something I want to experience. And it would be very embarrassing if I went to Armenia and I experienced a country that was full of hateful people, depressed people that wouldn't talk to me. I would have to lie when I came back, because I'd been talking about Armenia for at least 10 years, a lot. But of course, the experience was just fantastic, as you probably all know, or if you've been there. The hospitality, the way that they treated me, the way that they wanted to teach me Armenian, even if people didn't know a word of English, I managed to communicate. They're really easy to communicate with. So I picked up so many words and started making sentences of them, and kind of it's easy. They understand everything, even if, as you know, there's not one word. I know 10 languages. There is not one word in any of those languages that corresponds to Armenian. So it's fascinating. And Tigran, who actually became my best Armenian friend, is a shoe seller and a taxi driver. He took me in his taxi and drove me around to anywhere I wanted. And the thing is, I wanted to pay him because I'm Norwegian compared to Armenians. I'm rich. So I said, I'll pay you whatever I'd have to pay in Norway for this. And he refused. It was impossible. They just wanted the Armenian salary, which is like what I give to my kids, you know, for a week's salary is hardly anything. He brought me to his family, got to know his sister, and the story goes on. So I decided in 2016 that I need to do more for Armenia, because this is, to me, is becoming very, very important. So that's why I wrote the book. And I published it on my own. I paid for everything because I thought I'm not going to go through any kind of publishing house. Some of them were interested, but they said that either I should write a book about the genocide and the genocide denial, or a tourist guide. And I said, that's not my concept. I want to write a book about the genocide that people understand, that's easy, that's not too academic, but academic enough that it's, I mean, the correct description of the events, where I use a lot of course, the genocide scholars' work to show, you know, my thesis and what I actually say, and to prove that it's right. But on the other hand, it should be easily accessible for normal people. So I combined it with where I go through the Armenian genocide, comparing it to the Holocaust, the Jewish one, where you find actually that the 10 phases of both of them are almost exactly the same. You probably know this a lot better than I do anyway, since you are Armenians. But the point is that the only difference is actually the last phase, where the Germans admit it, whereas the Turks deny. Armenians got zero, nothing in compensation. The Jews got a lot for their compensation. So the book is actually divided into my experience, my trip, my fascination, the people I meet, everything I do in Armenia. Then comes the sad part, the genocide. Then comes more about my experience with Aydin in Armenia. And then finally, the last 1/3 of the book is about Artsakh and the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict with Azerbaijan and Azerbaijan's really terrible, clownish, racist regime. So that's also a very big part of it. So they're easily, yeah. I think Azerbaijanis are, even now, there is more hatred there than there is from the Turks, because that's really bad. You can't talk to them. It's impossible. I tried. I also had kids in school from Azerbaijan and Turkish kids, and every year I have a lecture for my whole school, all my students all together, 200 in one room. And every year I talk to the Turkish and the Azeri students, and I say, I'm going to do this. And if you can't stand listening to it, don't show up. The Turks show up and the Azeris don't. So that's the thing right here in Norway right now. So this is basically, I mean, the nice part is actually everything about what I experience, all the people I meet, all the funny situations I get myself into, and that the Armenians get themselves into. Being bitten by a snake in Artsakh, hospital Artsakh, all these things. I'm not going to say too much because then nobody's going to buy the book. So I think I'll just, but I'd really like some questions. Anything that you'd like to ask me about, I'd be happy to ask.
I know one thing that I would like to ask you, Sven, and you started talking a little about your childhood friend there, Ergin. That's a pretty big leap to go from, you know, denial to acceptance. And I think one thing that Armenians have not learned is how do you do that? Was there some event? Was there some, did you see him transition? I mean, did you see the lights come on in his eyes? And
yeah.
Maybe could you just talk a little bit about what it was that seemed to trigger that?
Yeah, what triggered it was actually the 24th of April, when some Armenians that I met and Ergin went up to Tsiskerdnakabert, and in the, you know, there is this forest where everybody planted a tree, all kind of presidents and prime ministers planted a tree. So we had an early morning breakfast before everything started, well, the event started. And we just sat there and listening to the music that came from the speakers and just talked quietly, and it was really nice. And then these Armenians started asking him questions, and they were really nice to him, and they accepted actually then and there that, okay, he had a problem accepting it. It was like they understood that, okay, you're from Turkey, you've heard that side of the story, and it's probably difficult for you to turn that around, since everybody around you denies the genocide. So at the time, I saw that he was getting eager to know more. And then when the event started, there were, you know, people demonstrating with large banners, people with flowers, laying them down. And then there was this group of very old women who were singing a kind of Armenian chant, holding candles. And I went up to them and I said, Tatikner, Tatikner, and I gave them a hug. And they actually, there were tears coming from their eyes as I did that. And I said, Norwegian, and fascinating that you're here singing this beautiful song, having flowers. And then I saw Ergin with tears in his eyes, and kind of when he saw all these Armenians going there, I mean, it's very difficult to say that this is something that Armenians worldwide just invented. You get it? That's what he said. Well, how could they invent something like that? I can't believe this is not possible. And so he said, can we go to the American University? Because there is a professor there, Termatavosyan, something like, I don't know if you know him, but he's Armenian, but he studied Turkish history. And he knew that name, and he said, I want to talk to him, and I want to talk to any other professor, preferably somebody who's not Armenian. And there was an American professor there at the time. So the 26th we went, and we talked to both of them. And then he all of a sudden realized that what he had learned in Turkey during the last couple of years was, like he said, this is just shit, this is cow shit. He doesn't say bullshit, but he said ghost shit and cow shit, and using Turkish words. And as we went along, we had so much fun all the time. We even drew maps to each other. You know, I said, okay, suggestion, Ergin, what are we going to give to the Armenians? And he had this map, and he said, well, not all of Wilsonia in Armenia, but I think they should get Batumi from Georgia. And so we had a lot of fun with it. And then he said, I'll talk to my president Erdogan about this tomorrow. And when he left, he left some days before I left. And he said that you didn't need to convince me. I was convinced here that and I think more Turks should go to Armenia to see it. And he's right, because there's another story that I didn't write about in the book. This is Umit that I taught in school when I started being a teacher. He called me like 20 years later and said that all this Armenia crap you're presenting on Facebook, I need to talk to you. Then I'll do this very fast, but the point is, when I met him for coffee, he said, I don't give a damn about the genocide thing. I want to talk to you about my grandfather. He just died. And said, I'm so sorry to hear that. And he lived in Tigranakert, Diyarbakir. And he said, can you come with me? Because I really want to know one thing. And you have to help me figure it out. Because his grandfather refused to recite the Islamic, you know, they say there is no God except Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. And he refused to recite that, and everybody does that before they die. That's the last thing they say if their heads are working. And he was clear until the end. He said he was 92, and he had no dementia, nothing, but he refused to recite that. And he said, I don't understand. What is the reason for that? And then I suggested to him, well, your grandfather might have been Christian, but he concealed it. Have you thought about that? And he said, well, that's not possible. He went to the mosque, he did everything. So that's not possible. And at the time, I had just changed job. I had just gotten a job as a principal in a school, and I could not go. I would have loved to go to Diyarbakir with him, obviously. So he went on his own, and to make a long story short, he found out that his father was an orphaned Armenian, having been adopted by Turkish parents who had taken very good care of him, but he knew all along that he was actually Armenian, because he had a twin brother who was also Armenian, adopted by another family. And they had incidentally met, and they were so similar. So they started working together on the thing. And the point is with Umit, he denied the genocide vehemently when he was in Norway. When he came back, he turned out to be Armenian. And he said, they bullshitted me my whole life. He went to Armenia, he went to Istanbul to convert to Armenian religion, to apostolic church. And he's been to all my lecture. He's the only guy who keeps coming back to all my lecture. He sits there. And right now, 2 days ago, he said, can you please write my whole story and put it on Facebook for the Norwegians to read it? And I did, and I had like 200 likes and lots of reactions to this. And you probably know this happens a lot. There are so many Armenians in Turkey who find out that they're actually Armenians when they're grown up. Even here, when I had a lecture, there was this woman, 50 years old. I was talking about the genocide, all of this stuff. And then she, all of a sudden, she stood up, tears in her eyes, and she said, I'm so moved by your story. I remember my grandmother told me about this. I grew up in Turkey, and they sent me to Norway because I went around telling everybody that I was Armenian. It was dangerous for me to live in Turkey. She came to Norway, and she also said that I haven't told anybody in Norway that I'm Armenian. And thanks to the Turkish Republic, I never learned my mother tongue, my language. I only speak Turkish. So these stories keep coming up, and they're really interesting because, I mean, I've heard about other Turks as well that just turn when they hear that actually they're Greek or Armenian or they're orphans. Even this guy in Ümit Üngör, the professor in Amsterdam, he suggested to me that we go to Western Armenia and make interviews with people, because if you find their descendants of Kurds and Turks who have heard the stories, people in the villages, they don't deny, they know about this genocide. So you could actually make them put it on the internet and say that, okay, who's denying? Because these farmers, they know that a lot of Armenians were killed. They probably don't know the story. They probably know that they should not use the word soykirimi, genocide, but they know, and they've heard from their grandparents. They're not denying anything. So it's interesting.
That is phenomenal. There's, not to distract too much, but there's a gentleman out in Los Angeles by name of Armin Aroyan, not a relative, but he's been taking Armenians to historic Armenia for the last 20 years. And he's met a lot of the Turks that are living there that, you know, at one time, they know that they're Armenian, you know,
Yeah.
historically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah.
he is someone that you may want to talk to.
Oh, really? Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So before we open it up for people to be able to ask some questions, I did want to ask you, what are, you know, when you take these Norwegians to Armenia, and if we were to ask them, you know, what is it that you enjoyed about Armenia, what is it that they typically, you think they would say?
They would say that they enjoy the people's hospitality, the way they are treated everywhere. They would say that they enjoy the food, because it's really different food in Armenia from you know, to Norway, and the way that because all the food is included, I always make sure that we go to the best restaurants and that everybody gets the same food, but that they can, you know, as you know, there are so many dishes to choose from, so everybody finds something they like, whatever you order. They would say that it's exciting, that it's new, and that it's really good. They would also say that they're really fascinated about the Armenian wine. And of course, the history and everything that Armenia has to offer, the landscape. They are in love with Dilijan. They go to Lastivir, to this extreme yell park. We go to Tatev Monastery. Actually, we do a lot of traveling around, but also have a couple of resting days in Yerevan, where I always say that, okay, you're on your own now. I want you to walk around and talk to people. That's one of the things, that's how you can learn to know Armenia. If I walk with you, I do all the talking because I talk to everybody. So, I mean, I steal the show. You have to go walk around on your own, go to a coffee shop and see if you can get in contact with somebody. And they always do, and they're so thrilled to see that these people are so easy to talk to. And that's why they want to keep coming back. They want to go back to Armenia. So it's a fantastic enthusiasm. I mean, all these people that I took there, they added me as a friend on Facebook. So I added, of course, I think that's fine, because then I can also kind of do some advertising on new trips. So I plan now a wine trip next time, and the one to Artsakh, but actually where we go to the Arini Wine Festival, because I took one group there and that was just fantastic. So what we did in Norway, we did not have any Armenian wine 2 years ago, but then I started calling, because they have these own stores in Norway, you know, liquor stores that are state owned, but they are required to take in any suggestion seriously. So I started calling them and asking for Armenian wine. And they said, no, no, you can buy Georgian wine, or there are so many wines that we have. Why do you need Armenian wine? And I called 10 times in a row, 10 days in a row, speaking a different Norwegian dialect every time so that they would not understand that I was the same guy. And I asked everybody else to do it. And this old lady in my school, she went down to this liquor store and she went straight to the boss and she said, where is the shelf for the Armenian wine? I can't find it anywhere. Well aware that there was no such shelf, that there was no. And she said, are you aware of Armenia is the oldest wine producing country in the world? How come you don't have their wine? This is crazy. And now actually, congratulations, we have 6 different kinds of Armenian.
Wow, wow.
And 2 of them are really popular. It's Sora Karasi and the other, the white wine, Sora Vodski or something like that.
Oh, that's delightful. What a great story. So I want to put up some pictures that you sent me. Maybe you can just give a comment or 2 about them. But while I put those pictures up, inside of your book, there was a fascinating story. So I remember growing up and hearing about the Van cats.
The Van cat. Yeah, exactly.
And you met someone in Armenia that I guess went to Van and brought some cats and is trying to sort of resurrect that breed. Could you just talk a little bit about that? And I'm going to put up your slides here in a second while you talk about that.
It's a fascinating story. I knew about the Van cat before the first time I went to Armenia, because there are actually 3 Van cats in Norway. And I visited all 3 of them. One of them had never seen water or never been able to swim. So I took the lady for a walk and I just took the cat and threw it in the water. And she said, you are totally crazy. You're going to kill my cat. And the Van cat, you know, she loved this. She was just crazy. She didn't want to come out of that water. She was swimming around, and she did not know anything about what's special to the Van cat, but she knew that it was Turkish. So I corrected her and said, it's actually Armenian, the cat. And then in Armenia, with Ergin, we found this farmer in Khentsoresk. It's a city with caves, actually, close to Tatev. And we saw these cats, and I thought this has to be a Van cat because it's got different color eyes and it's got exactly the same fur. And actually, yeah, he had smuggled 4 Van cats from Turkey. You're not allowed to take them out of Turkey, you know, it's really strict. And trying to breed them, and that was his point. Now he lives in Vanadzor, and he's got, last time I talked to him, I think he's got 8 cats. And so I sold a lot of the English edition books in Armenia to tourists, because they're selling the book at the Tsiskenakabert, at the bookstore there, and in Echmiadzin as well, and in some bookstores in Yerevan, and they pay me for every book sold. So I said, okay, I want to spend this money giving it to some good project in Armenia, but I want to decide which project. And so I give them directly, or even I add some more to this guy who's breeding the Van cats, because I think that would be a small victory, just getting some of the Van cats back to Armenians where they actually belong. And since there, for the time being, are no Armenians in Van, maybe we could get some of them to Sevan instead, or at least have some of them in Armenia. So as far as I know, there are 8 of them right now, but he has a breeding program so that more people can have them.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. I enjoyed reading that story. Okay, so let me put up some of your photographs here, and this is the cover to your book. And we'll just show, there's only 5 or 6 photographs, so hold tight, folks. It won't be that long, and then we'll open up for questions, okay?
Yeah, so this is, you all know what that is. And I got this giant flag at the vernissage in Yerevan. And when Tigran, this is actually from my first trip in 2015. And he took me to Ararat and Khorvirab. And this is right before I started running towards the border, and he ran after me. And I said, you want to get killed by the Turks? No, I want to go straight up to the fence, and I want to touch Western Armenia. And he had to hold me back because I was so fascinated by them. I've read about the mountain. I've never seen anything like it. It's so special. So he took that photo, and then I put the flag into his arms, and I said, just leave me alone for a while. And I started running, and he was running after me. So this is from the road, and it's pretty close to actually the closed border. And this is one of my groups. It's a little bit later, as you see, Khorvirap in the back there, and it was cloudy that day, so they didn't get to see Ararat. But these were really eager, and I think 8 of these people actually signed up for the Artsakh trip. And curious people, inquisitive, wanted to know everything, and that's what's so fascinating by taking people to Armenia, because they say that, okay, we will only go if you give us a lecture in Armenia on the genocide, on Armenia, on Armenian wines and stuff. So we actually have every evening when we get back from an excursion, there is a 1 hour, 2 hours lecture on different topics, different Armenian topics. But this was a very special group. So we spent some hours there in Khorvirap, and then we went to some other viewpoints some other day where we got to see Ararat anyway.
Did you go down into the pit?
Yes, I go down every time to show the tourists that it's not dangerous, and they go down after me. So yeah.
Okay.
So this is from my garden. I have I have a summer house in Norway. It's about 30 kilometers from where I live. I live in the center of Oslo, but we have a summer house with a very nice garden. And we bought that 6 years ago. And there was a beautiful garden there, but nobody had fixed it. So it was, I mean, something had to be done to that garden. So I decided that I was going to make a poker Hayastan Partes. And so I got lots of Armenian kind of monuments in small scale. I got an artist to create Mount Ararat in the garden. I got somebody to create Vanalich in the garden. And an artist in Armenia actually gave me Tatik Papik from Artsakh as a present, because he really wanted that. It weighs like 20 kilos. So one time I was in Armenia, that was my only luggage. They lent me clothes and everything, because you're allowed 20 kilos on Aeroflot to Norway. So that was actually my whole luggage that I brought back. But I was so happy I did it. And I got some tirana trees that I planted there. Also Armenian grapes, of course, Areni grapes. And now they're going to, when borders open again after Corona, they have saved some tut trees that I'm going to try to plant. So this is all, this garden is called the Poker Hayastan. It's got a very nice sign that an artist created as well with Armenian letters and then translated into Norwegian. So, and a big flag also for Artsakh flag and Armenian flag. And everybody who passes by, they're really curious. You know, they try to talk to me, and they come to my door, and I say, well, why is this Armenia? Are you Armenian? And you know, so it's kind of a learning process for the people who walk by to see Poker Hayastan. And it's actually, I can promise, the only Armenian garden in Norway, I think maybe in all of Europe. The funny thing is, I have to tell you that 2 years ago, I was at home alone, and I was doing some gardening, and then somebody calls me, unknown number, and I pick up the phone, and they say, hi, we're from Armenia, we are on holiday in Norway, could we please come and see the biggest tourist attraction in Oslo? And I said, and which one is that? Would that be the Holmenkollen ski jump? No, that would be Poker Hayastan. We are here now with a minivan or a minibus. We are 8 people. So could you please welcome us? And I said, it's fantastic. So I said, but you have to wait an hour, because I know that when Armenians invite somebody, the tables are full of food. So I had to rush to the store and get some buns and, you know, whatever I could do very, very fast, coffee, ice cream, whatever Norwegian that I thought the Armenians would like. And so they spent like 2 hours in that garden, and we had lunch, and they had presents. You know, I got Ararat brandy, I got wine, I got candy, all kinds of Armenian stuff. So, I mean, now they're my friends. When I go to Armenia now, I meet them. They're because now when I see a Jan name asking me to be a Facebook friend, I always add, and I think this can come in handy sometime in Armenia, of course, that I know some Armenians. And actually sometimes on the street, they stop me and they say, aren't you Tigran from Norway? Yeah, oh, we're Facebook friends. Oh, are we really? And then, you know, got a conversation going. So it's really exciting. I swear to God, I never thought that I would be so engaged in this and so motivated. Even, you know, I'm running a college, a junior college in Norway that prepare people for university. And it's a school with a very high academic level. It's the best school in Norway, actually. It's got the highest grades. And I don't give them those grades. They do that on exams that actually other teachers around Norway or they evaluate. But the point is that the whole school is now into Armenia, and we are now, we started last year with this. They go abroad once a year, all the second graders, 66 students, and they went to France and Spain so far. But last year I asked the teachers, and I didn't say anything. I just said, okay, can anybody create a new kind of concept for a trip? And then the teachers came to me and said that we want to take them to Armenia. Will you join us? And I said, well, you know what the answer is here. So we planned a trip, and we were actually supposed to be there right now. We wanted to be there on the 24th of April. And the kids were just crazy, and they were crying that we had to postpone this a year. But they will still be there next 24th of April. So we're trying to do the trip then. And all the parents were so fascinated. And so this whole group are really, and they also learned Kochari, the dance you probably know about, because we have Armenian friends in Norway who came to school and taught them. So every year now we will take 66 students to Armenia. That's our new concept. And of course we get more students that way, because this year we've had 500 applicants for 66 openings.
Whoa.
Last year we had 250. So when they come to school, you know, we have these open days where they can come, and we talk about Armenia, and this is where we're going, because we're saying that everybody goes to London, to France, even to the States. I mean, Norwegians have a lot of money, so they can travel anywhere, but nobody goes to Armenia. So, I mean, if you're going to school to learn something, you should go somewhere where you wouldn't have gone normally, and they all agree. So this has become a very, very nice concept for us. So they're all eager, and I really hope we can manage to pull it through, that the coronavirus will more or less disappear, so we can go maybe after Christmas to Armenia. Right, so this is, yeah, this is the same t-shirt that I have that you see. I demand my home since I come from Banalich, so I want the Western Armenia to go back to Armenia. This is actually from the wine festival in Areni that we went last year. Last fall to Areni to participate in the wine festival, which is fantastic. More than 80 wineries presented their wines. We all got drunk. People were playing the saxophone. We were all dancing, and free wine for everybody, like everything in Armenia. I mean, you don't even need pocket money in Armenia. If I'm hungry, I go to the market, I pick up 2 apples, and they say, unless you buy a kilo, you don't pay. They give me the apples. So what I do now is I buy a kilo and I pay, and I leave the apples that I don't want to eat, and I say it's a present from me after I paid. Because I think it's kind of, I mean, a poor country where people struggle and they give away what the little they have. That's also a fascinating thing. You can, in Norway, in rich Norway, you don't get an apple for free. I can promise you that. You pay a lot for it, actually. So so these are some people that I met there. And yeah, and this is on the way up to Gegat Monastery, where these guys were playing duduk and drums. And so I bought my own duduk and I joined them. I can't play it, but just pretended. But I thought it would be nice to have a photo of it anyway.
And that was the last one that you sent me.
Yeah. So very many nice experiences in Armenia altogether.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we, unless you had something else specifically that you want to talk about, let's ask people to unmute themselves, and please feel free to ask.
Any question that you want, I will try to answer.
You can ask Dikran Van any question that you like.
Any questions I will take and I will answer.
Hi, Sven. This is Edward. I'm curious about Norway's official position on the genocide. Have they taken a stance? Has it been brought up for a vote? What is the situation? And if you did mention that, I did miss the first couple of minutes. So I apologize.
It is very interesting because, as I mentioned, well, that was probably the first couple of minutes. There are 2 Armenian heroes that were Norwegians. They're obviously dead now, but There's Bodil Bjørn, who was a missionary in the Ottoman Empire, and she saved a lot of orphaned children. She did not have the time to convert any Turks or any Armenians to become Norwegian Christians, evangelical ones. She actually had to deal with all these orphans. So she saved hundreds, if not thousands of them. She even adopted one of the kids and took him home to Norway, and she went back. She was in Mosh, and there's a lot of things that she wrote in her diary that was now given to Zisken Nakabert, where she tells about the church fires and everything they did in Mosh to the people. And she's a real Armenian hero, and her community then kind of recognized the genocide on their own without having the support of the Norwegian government. So they've recognized it for that was like 15 years ago or something. Then comes the thing that we had Nansen, of course, that saved a couple of hundred, maybe 100,000 lives by introducing the Nansen passports. So probably your grandfathers, great-grandfathers, they had some use of that, because lots of states, lots of countries gave Armenians passports, and many Armenians were allowed to choose which country they wanted to go to. So there's a statue of him in Armenia. So I'm really ashamed to say this, but the Norwegian government is not interested in dealing with the issue because there is nothing to gain. There is no money in it, and we're actually delivering the Nobel Peace Prize. So I've written letters to all of the representatives in Parliament in Norway, and I also gotten some responses where they say they totally agree with me, but it's very difficult because the big parties, the Conservative Party and the Workers' Party, Socialist Party, they're against recognizing anything at all. Nobody says that the genocide didn't happen. We do not deny it. Norway does not either support Turkish stand on it, but they just don't want to do it officially. And I think it's a real shame that Norway doesn't do it, because Sweden did it, Denmark halfway did it, Germany, France, all these European countries that are kind of like Norway. We're in the NATO, we're allied with these countries, and it's really a very, very hard job to make, even to bring it up, even to put it to a vote. So it was never put to a vote, but as more and more people grow aware of this, I must say that there is nobody in Norway saying that the genocide didn't happen. Nobody. I haven't met one soul except some Turks, but the rest of and Kurds also say that it happened. I mean, it's just Turks. It's like it's bound to a certain nationality, because all the Kurds from Turkey in Norway, they read and they find out that, oh, there was a genocide, oh my God, and we were part of it. So this is critical, and I'm ashamed of my country that we haven't done that officially, but I can promise you that every Norwegian here, if we were to decide the people, they would recognize it yesterday.
Thank you for that. And one quick follow-up. Is the Armenian genocide part of the scholastic, is there a chapter in history that is dedicated to that?
A very small chapter. It doesn't say, we have these, in Norway, we have history books, and then there are, in addition to the books, there are some kind of rules that we have to follow, that all the teachers, there's a curriculum that they have to teach, and that's given by the educational system that says that everybody has to go through these kind of things. And what it says is that you have to teach genocides. Doesn't specify the Armenian or the Rwandan, but it specifies Holocaust. So at least you have to teach that one. But I checked all the history books that are available, and there is a very small chapter on the Armenian genocide. So no, we're not obliged to do it. I, of course, do it. All my teachers, history teachers in my school do it, because I took them also, I forgot to say that, I took all the teachers to Armenia. Instead of going to someplace in Norway and having a seminar, we took our seminar in Armenia. And all the religion teachers and the history teachers, they said, some of them had studied history to top level, university level, masters, and they said they never heard about the Armenian genocide. So it's very underrepresented here. In Sweden and Denmark, it's a totally different story. I know Denmark, every 24th of April, they have different kinds of commemorations around the country. Whereas Norway, of course, Armenians in Norway and some Norwegians, they meet at Nansen's home, and they put flowers and they have speeches. but it's actually very little. When I talk to politicians face to face, they all agree with me. They said we should recognize, but political parties don't seem to want to grab this possibility or do anything about it. So it's a sad story. But I'm a member of the history teachers web page in Norway, so I keep putting out things about the Armenian genocide. And what the teachers say is that, well, there are many genocides, so why would we do this one? And then I say, well, we should do this one because this one is clearly denied by the perpetrators. And then they agree. They say, yeah, that's an important issue. So I think more and more people are starting to talk about it, and that's very good.
Thank you very much. I look forward to reading your book.
Thank you.
Professor, I have a question.
Yeah.
All these people who are so
Can you repeat that?
love it.
It was hard to hear you.
Yeah.
Is it easier to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to thank you for your passion for Armenia. And I wanted to know all these people that you're taking to Armenia with you, when they come back, how are they changed? Do they become more active in accepting other people like Armenians and what has happened to them? Or do they perhaps start becoming even more active in promoting the recognition of the genocide, or even just the recognition of Armenians as a whole?
Yeah, they are all that I've heard from everybody that I brought. It must have been like 300 people now, or 400. I'm not sure. I'm losing track because I've been to Armenia 15 times and I took a lot of people there. They are, just let me put it this way. When they hear that I wrote the book about Armenia, they all order the book afterwards. And then they come back and they want 10 more books because they want to give them as presents to other people, because they want people to know about the genocide and about Armenia. So that's one thing. Other thing is that they constantly, they call me and they say, what can we do? Is there, can we join the Armenian Norwegian community? Some of them join that because there is a community for Armenians where also Norwegians can be members. And they actually, once a year, I have this barbecue, Khorovats in Poker Hayastan, where we try to make it Armenian. Of course, we can't because we don't have tony, we can't make lavash. But actually, I have an Iranian Kurdish friend in Oslo who has a tony. So I go down there and I get some lavash, and so they are eager to promote Armenia as a tourist destination, and they are really eager to talk about the Armenian genocide. So that changes when they are there. When I have lectures in Oslo with people who don't go to Armenia, I think they get the idea that there has been a genocide, that it's denied, and that's really bad. How much they work on it afterwards, I'm not sure. But actually being in Armenia, talking to the Armenians, listening to the guides, because I always do it this way. I have a lecture for them once we get to Armenia before we go to Tsiskernakabet. I talk to them, I show them my PowerPoints with photos. I never write anything on the PowerPoints because I think that's really boring. So I just show them photos and I talk and they can ask questions. Then we have the local guide, Ripsime Badalayan. She's really good. She's an historian actually. She talks about the Armenian genocide from the Armenian side and from her family's side and from the people that they lost and where they actually came from and all that. Then we go through the museum with a guide. We see the monument, and they really, I think they're doing a fantastic job when they come back, all of them, and they're very aware, and they tell their kids about it. And actually, you know, I just see when they order 10 books and want to give them away as presents, I think that actually, yeah, my goal is kind of fulfilled, because then, I mean, then it means something to go to Armenia. Actually, I would like to go on my own a lot more. And I try to do that, but I mean, it's a pressure also from the travelers agency because so many people want to go to Armenia and they want to go if I go, because they say, well, they could get other people from Norway as guides going. But since I wrote the book and since I'm engaged and since they say that I'm funny, you know, I make it interesting, they want me to go. So yeah, that's enough about me. But anyway, yeah, I think they come back knowing more. They never had a problem with Armenians in Norway. I mean, it's not some people in Norway have a problem with Pakistanis who come here or Turks who come here because there are so many and they follow their own rules. And I mean, it creates problems because they become a group within society and they have different views on things, and I mean, criminality, not learning the language. Armenians here, anywhere they live, are really popular because they contribute. In this area in the south of Norway, where 20% of the population actually is Armenian, that's not very much. That's only 200 people, because no more than, what, 4,000 live there. But I mean, they're carpenters, they do a very good job, they are popular. And I meet people from there, they say, oh my God, I know Armenians, they live in my village. And they're so popular, they're so nice people. So there is nothing against Armenians in Norway at all, that's for sure. Like in the rest of Europe, I don't think Armenians anywhere are mentioned as a problem. Like in France, they're the most popular group, actually, because they contributed so much. And that's Macron is saying it all the time. Armenians fantastic, as you know, in Canada as well. So you got a lot to go on there. There is no hatred or no skepticism towards Armenians.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just wondering about all these people who are learning much more because of your teaching, and you're taking them on trips. And now perhaps your book is going to help people learn a lot more than they knew before about Armenians. And I'm personally looking forward to reading it.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Professor. I'm Haig. I'm joining the meeting from Los Angeles.
Oh, nice. You live in Glendale?
No, Sun Valley, close to Glendale.
Okay.
Professor, first I want to thank you for the interesting presentation, for sharing your thoughts, your pictures and impressions about Armenia. Also, I would like to thank you for loving Armenia and Armenians.
So much. It's very easy to love Armenia and Armenians, I promise you.
Yeah, thank you. I want to talk about the denial. As we all know, the denial is the center of the issue from the Armenians' standpoint, and we understand when politicians such as the former politicians, the Demirels of the world, Ijevits of the world, and today the Erdogans of the world, when they deny, we know exactly their position, their reasons for denying, for political reasons. But when it comes to average Turks, we as Armenians, whenever we approach them at work or in other situations, there is always tension, there is always reservations, and we can never get close to a Turk to get to their hearts, to really get a feel. So as a non-Armenian, you are in a very unique position to get closer to their feelings, to their hearts. And my question is, what is your feeling about why the average Turk denies the genocide? Is it ignorance, or is the fear of the retribution, or it's the burden of the guilt that also can be an issue?
Yeah.
What's your thought about that?
I have been very eager to find out actually what is happening, because there is no way that one nation can convince a population of what, 80 million, that this did not happen, and they can do it for years. So at some point, there must be big holes in the story that they rewrote and the lies. Because what I've noticed is that when I talk to Turks about this, and they're eager to do it, some of them are really nice. I mean, I must say, when I meet Turks and I don't mention anything about Armenia, they're hospitable, they're nice, and they're friends. And I mean, all these Turks that I've met in Norway, all the Turks that I taught in school, I've had no problem. As soon as I mention the Armenian genocide, they are very skeptical, and they have their own version of what happened. But this version is different from every Turk. Some of them say that Armenians killed them. Some of them don't say that. They say there was a war, so Armenians didn't get any food. Some of them say that it didn't happen at all, that there is no proof of it. So there are all kinds of different stories trying to deny the genocide or to change the story, or at the least try to kind of make it. I mean, I talked to a guy who said that, well, it might have happened, but when you're talking about 1.5 million, that's not true. It must have been 70,000. So they kind of, yeah, everything they rewrite. But then again, I even talked to a Turkish deputy ambassador, and I promised never to mention where and his name, and because I had a lecture abroad, and he came to me afterwards, because they always show up. Every time I have a lecture, I know which ones come from the Turkish embassy. They're always there, well dressed, and they're sitting in the back, and they always have some questions, and I'm getting tired of answering them. But anyway, he came afterwards, invited for a beer, and he said, you know, most of us know that this happened, but we cannot change that history. And I asked him a lot of questions, and it turns out that, okay, the whole nation has been lied to for 100 years. I mean, changing that narrative, changing the story of their heroes, like Talat Pasha, who's actually a Turkish hero, who's got streets, hospitals, kindergartens named after him, kind of saying that Atatürk was not a nice guy to Armenians. I mean, he did a lot of bad things, a lot of atrocities towards Armenians. That's not possible because everybody believes, or they want to believe, this is the Turkish pride. So when they hear that there was a genocide and they try to figure out if it really happened, they will find out that it happened, but it's kind of the mainstream society that, especially in Turkey, Turks in Turkey, they do not want to do this because, yeah, it's shameful. You would have to change the narrative. What would happen to politicians who did this, who say that actually we should deal with the genocide? It would be an outburst and a crisis, of course, by not only the nationalist Turks, but with a lot of Turks. Well, they had these surveys, 88% of Turks that they asked say that they should not meet the Armenians on the demands of recognizing the genocide. But I know enough Turks to know that most of them actually know that something happened, that there most likely was a genocide, but they also say that, my parents say that since I'm a Turk, I have to agree with the Turkish politics, so I'm not changing my mind, whatever you say. And I think that says a lot, that actually it's impossible. 80 million people cannot, it's not possible in today's world. You can't get away with convincing a whole nation that this did not happen. So I think they know, but I think, as you said, it's shame. It's the thing with, it's also got something to do with women in Turkey, because women are denying even more than men. They get angry. They actually throw, I got a mobile phone in my backhead from a Turkish woman, because they want to prove to the men that they are standing up for Turkish rights, that they're very important and that they can do something, that they want positions. So when I listen to Turkish politicians talking about the Armenian genocide, they're probably even worse than Erdogan when they deny. It's really scary. So there are lots of issues altogether here. And of course, the 15% Turkish population in Turkey. Now we have to put the Kurds apart, because most Kurds, anyway, not all of them, but all of the ones I met in Norway, and that's a lot of them. I even went to have a lecture in a Kurdish auditorium where lots of them came. They admit, and they are sorry about it because they had a big part in it, and they say, okay, wish we could do something to compensate the Armenians, but what can we do? We have nothing to give them. So I think that's, I mean, the 10 million Kurds in Turkey would be an easier task to convince as the real Turks. But the thing is, they can't keep on saying it, because since I talked to, like, say 100 Turks, they would have 100 different stories. Nothing holds water. Everything is changed, and they all have their own ideas on how to deny it. So it's interesting. And if they lose the discussion, I mean, if I really, now I know so much about it, and actually for a while, I loved discussing it with Turks, because I thought this is a learning process. The more Turks I discuss it with, the better I get. The more Turks I can manage to convince, or at least try to put in the right place. Even the Turkish ambassador, because they had this meeting in the foreign committee in Norway, where Armenian Ted Matevosyan, he came to Norway not to talk about the genocide, but he wanted to talk about Turkish-Armenian relations from the 90s and up until today. So I called Ted Matevosyan and I said, so what are you going to talk about? There are no relations. No, he said, but we almost had them. And he wants to talk about the development, including Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan, as you know, have a lot of influence on Turkey, and about the football diplomacy that almost, where you almost managed to open maybe the borders and stuff. And he just came to talk about that, nothing about the genocide. And then I went, of course, to the meeting, and I saw the three Turks sitting there, two well-dressed people, one fat Slav that it looked like he was working on the port of Oslo, picking up bananas or something. And he was the one that actually, when he took the microphone and he held a lecture on 10 minutes about the denial of the genocide with all these people there. And the leader of the conference did not stop him. And when he was done, I wanted to say something. And he said, well, remember, you can only ask questions. You're not allowed to give lectures. And I actually said that, okay, so holding lectures are only for Turks here in the question answer session. And I, as a Norwegian, cannot say my opinion about this and what he said and all the accusations that he gave Armenia. I'm going to talk. So I kept on talking for 10 minutes. And when the session was over, this fat guy followed me into the lift and he said, I'm going to hit you because you're a terrible person. You don't understand anything about this. And what's your name, by the way? So I showed him the book that I had in my rucksack. And I said, well, I'm the one who wrote this book. Well, I know about you. I know about you. So this is kind of, the thing is they always meet up and they always have some comment to say. So I always, when there is an Armenian lecture, there's also another guy in Norway who does that, who travels around talking about Armenia. He's only been there once, but he's a very fine scholar. I always go there in order to defend him and help each other to kind of park, as we say in Norwegian, we park the Turks where they belong because they're not going to get away with this. They're always trying to make it like, as you know, they say that it's a conflict between two people and we should settle the conflict ourselves. No, it's not a conflict between two people. There is one group of perpetrators that denied what happened. And if you put it in perspective, it would be like saying, okay, after the war, the Jews should deal with the Nazis themselves and they should talk about this and then agree. I mean, nobody does that. So
Sven, you could always suggest to them that you go back to Turkey and see if you could have a similar kind of discussion taking place there.
And you can't, because then you get jailed. And that's the thing, you know, there's the penal code 301 in the Turkish
Right.
law that says that you can actually go to jail if you mention the word genocide. So yeah. But the interesting, what I always do is I love these Turkish genocide scholars that actually know the truth and who wants to convey the truth. And as the ones I know best is Taner Akçam. He's in the States and it's Ümit Ungör. And I always show them, okay, these are Turks. Look, these are very good Turks. These are intellectual Turks. They're professors at universities, the best universities. And they go crazy. And one guy said, well, don't you know about Taner Akçam? He's been jailed. Yeah, and why was he jailed? Well, he talked about the genocide in Turkey. You can't trust him. And I said, oh, so that's why he was jailed, exactly. So yeah, and those guys actually.
He's at Clark University in Worcester, Mass.
Exactly, yeah. And he's written books now, and so you probably know this, but there is no way they can deny it now because you actually found out that these telegrams from Talat Pasha, they are authentic. He authenticated all of them. He spent years doing it. And he also said that now it's going to be very difficult to deny it. Because one of the things that the Turks always said that, well, there's no evidence because there were no, Talat Pasha didn't sign anything, but neither did Hitler. So actually the Armenian genocide is actually more likely that one happened than the Holocaust because Hitler didn't sign any papers, but Talat Pasha did. So that there you have the proof. I'm getting very engaged here, as you hear, when I talk about this. Have any more questions?
Yeah, thank you, Professor. I just want to draw a quick parallel between the crimes committed by the Ottoman Empire and Bolshevik communists in Russia. I'm I'm a product of the communist society. I grew up in Soviet Armenia, so I know the power, what is the power of propaganda, because for decades, the population in Soviet Union thought that all the lies thought about Lenin, Bolsheviks, and the communists, we thought that it was true. And in the kindergartens, we sang things about Lenin, about the party, until after the collapse of the Soviet Union, people were told that all that was a lie.
Yeah.
But so today, that lie and propaganda continues in Turkey, and I kind of feel sympathetic for the average in a middle level of intellectual Turk to fall a victim of that propaganda, and not being able to look at the issue objectively.
Mm-hmm. Of course, but I mean the chances of the Turks now being able to figure out more on their own are, of course, a lot better than living in Soviet Armenia, because you had no internet and there was very little contact probably with the rest of the world. So they managed to, I mean, all the communist countries kind of closed their populations inside. So that's
Right.
kind of, when I'm thinking there is no, they say, sometimes they say, you don't like Turks. And I said, okay, why do I have Turkish friends? Why is my best friend a Turk? So you think I'm a racist, that it's because you're Turkish that I don't like you? No. What I don't like is genocide deniers, and that doesn't matter which genocide they deny. I mean, I don't like the ones who deny the Holocaust or the Rwandan genocide or the Bosnian genocide. So it's genocide deniers. No, I don't like them, and we cannot. Sometimes they say, "Oh, can we just agree to disagree?" No, we can do that on a lot of issues, but not on denying a genocide. People understand it if I compare it directly to the Holocaust, because in Norway was involved in the Holocaust. We sent Jews to Auschwitz. 1,600 Jews were killed because of the Norwegian police. They gave them to the Nazis. So this is an issue here. And if people say that the Holocaust with the Jews didn't happen, you're almost thrown in jail here. I mean, if you deny that, then people think you're crazy. But if I use that and I say, okay, it's exactly the same thing, people understand it perfectly what I mean. So there are no two sides to any genocide.
Yep. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I join if possible?
Oh, Barev